Well, you're welcome to a lightweight bonus boxing show with myself, Dom McGuinness, as ever, Anthony $1 Million Crolla, and joined by boxing reporter extraordinaire Rob Tebbutt as well, just to wrap up a few things and preview what's coming up at the weekend. But Anthony, firstly, you've been a little bit off piece today. Come on, just tell us what you've been doing.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie, Dom, Rob, I've been doing a bit of modelling. It's gone down really well. Roll back the years. If there's ever, my missus is in trouble because if we're ever single, some of my Tinder profile pictures are going to be good. They're going to be great.
Well, yeah, I just saw one actually where you're looking really confused in a jacket and a shirt, and it looked like you just tied up your dog somewhere and you couldn't remember where you'd left him.
Call that the look away, the look away.
Right, what was it, kind of red steel or something mad?
Blue steel. Is it blue steel?
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, Rob, good to have you on as well today. Of course, Anthony's been modelling. I don't know what you've been up to.
I've also been modelling as well. I just did a Giacomo commercial. So that's why I've put on the extra poundage. You see, I'm a character actor and making sure that I'm playing the part. But no, in all seriousness, I'm doing very well. Very much looking forward to this weekend. Canelo Alvarez, of course, returning to the ring. And last weekend's double-header stateside still has me buzzing from that. I thought it was a great weekend of boxing. Yeah. Looking forward to catching up and chopping it up with you two. Yeah,
well, do you know, it's a few days on now, but it's still a huge talking point. I mean, if you look at all the publications, if you look at what's still, you know, making the news and everything else. And again, it's easy to get a bit overexcited when these things are hyped, but I think it's fair to say that Taylor Serrano did match the hype, the fight itself, the event, and everything that went around it, you know, as the biggest women's fight. These things can often kind of disappoint. This one certainly didn't, did it?
And now, ladies and gentlemen, the stage is set and
It was unbelievable. Obviously, I was lucky enough to be there, but I think one thing for sure, the atmosphere was always going to be something else, but it's one of the very best I've ever, you know, been lucky enough to be ringside. I think, Rob, you've been at huge shows, and I think if you can get two sets of fans like the Puerto Ricans and the Irish, two very proud nations, with two amazing fighters in Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano, if they can deliver, which they did and more, you know it's going to be a special night. And honestly, I was buzzing for days for it. Obviously, my friend Liam Smith won the fight before, so that just set the ball rolling. But what everyone was talking about it, and New York that night, every Irish bar was packed out as you'd expect, and there was just a great feeling about the place. And I don't know, I'm sure we're going to get onto it. It was a fight that'll be remembered forever. But a fight that I thought it was the right decision. I thought Katie had definitely done enough, but there was people near me who thought it could have gone the other way. But I just thought, what an amazing fight.
Benoit Roussel, 96-94, Amanda Serrano. Glenn Felton, 97-93, Katie Taylor. And the Wheel Valdez scores this bout 96-93. The winner by split decision. And still.
Yeah, similar to Ant, really. I actually, while I was watching it live at the time, I think 4 o'clock in the morning, so it's not always the best time to score a fight. I actually had it a draw. I went back and rewatched the fight. Yeah. I've actually rewatched the fight twice since then, and I had Katie Taylor 6 rounds to 4 both times. Close fight, yeah. But the more you watch it, the more that you can see when Taylor was able to hold her distance and you know, she kind of elected to trade in those middle rounds, which was really was suicidal. Holding her feet and banging it out with Amanda Serrano really allowed her a route into the fight, showed amazing toughness to get through that 5th and 6th rounds, and then finished the fight strong, maintained that distance again for rounds 8 and 9. And, you know, the 10th round was brilliant. Both left it all in there. And just like Ant said, you know, much was made about the fight in the build-up, and it kind of had this kind of carnival festival atmosphere, and it was, you know, the biggest women's fight of all time, and that's all very well and good, and, you know, putting all of that stuff behind it is all great, but the fighters have to go out there and perform, and they did, and it was a fantastic. It was. I mean, we hear it all the time. It's not just women's boxing; it's boxing in general. But it really was a great night for boxing.
Couple of things that it has thrown up, though, because the spectacle and the event and everything else, that you just cannot argue with it being a huge, massive success. But in terms of the female side of the game, there are still issues with there being as many belts as there are active fighters. You know, you've got the top of the tree with these two. I mean, absolutely elite performers. It doesn't matter if they're male or female; they're just elite performers, and they prove that. But then you still got the 10-round championship fight, the 2-minute rounds. These are still issues that, you know, do we look at that fight and say, actually, that's a good advert for a 2-minute round, because the fellas maybe should do 2 minutes to do that. You know what I mean? There's still these issues that have to be solved, aren't there?
For me, the 2 minutes isn't an issue for me. I believe, but then obviously we'll talk about pay. I mean, listen, certain fighters I know, for instance, Natasha Jonas, 3 minutes would 100% suit her more. But I don't know, maybe I'm saying the wrong thing here. I'm not really correct. But those 2 minutes, when two styles gel, those 2-minute rounds are fast, frantic, so exciting. I think, how can anyone complain about them? I just thought, what an amazing fight. And listen, there'd be so many fights. I almost believe it'd be a different sport again, almost. If we did make 3-minute rounds, but I think everyone's got an opinion on that. Like I said, I've just mentioned, I know Natasha would certainly like 3 rounds, but I don't think that should be a talking point after a fight like that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think 10-2s, it kind of gives you this sort of turbocharged boxing match, really. I would like to see maybe 12-2s. I think 12-2s for championship fights, I think, would be a good move. I don't agree with this. I feel like it even happened in the build-up to this when Jake Paul was saying that Amanda Serrano would like 3-minute rounds. It's all very well and good, but it does become a different sport. 10-2s is, you know, you've got 20 minutes of boxing with 9 minutes of rest. If you then suddenly go to 30 minutes of boxing with 9 minutes of rest, that's quite a different ratio. So it would completely change the sport. For somebody like Katie Taylor, who's extremely seasoned as an amateur, as we all know, a list of accolades, she's used to that frenetic, ferocious pace. So that kind of suits her more. Whereas Serrano, I think maybe she blew out in the fight because I think she was fighting above her natural weight or her optimum weight. I know she's gone up and down, but I think if she was at sort of featherweight as opposed to lightweight, maybe she could take her time a little bit more. But she's got 30 knockouts anyway, so she doesn't have that much problem with getting rid of her opponents in those 2 minutes, which is, as Natasha Jonas will attest to. Chantel Cameron is another well-known female fighter who I think would probably benefit from 2-minute rounds.
Sure.
They would like that, but there's pros and cons to all of it. But yeah, no, I think the kind of turbocharged 10-2s, it's certainly a different vibe, but it's very, very exciting.
Dom, do you know, just on the fight, I wanted to ask this. I was put on social media. People who was there, obviously, we was just thinking, what is going on? I don't know how much DAZN shown of Serrano's corner. Serrano's cornerman, I think, is it a brother-in-law or something like that? Or am I wrong there? Am I right? The strangest cornerman, you know, the work. It'd be like, it was, if something was about him, that was his moment. He was walking to the center of the ring. He's walking outside talking to me, but I think he's been in trouble for it before. But it was just absolutely mental. Like, whoever I was sat next to in the crowd, I was sat next to Stephen Smith, so he probably would have been better. But it could have been absolutely anyone. My mum was in the upper tier. I could have got her down, and she would have been much more useful in the corner than Amanda Serrano's coach. It was just the strangest, oddest piece of corner work I think I've ever seen, especially in a big fight.
Yeah,
did it show much of that on DAZN?
They didn't show much of that, but that's not the first time that we've seen that. It was actually in Amanda Serrano's last fight. She boxed Miriam Gutierrez on the Jake Paul undercard. And it was kind of the Puerto Rican Mexican rivalry, and he was in between, shouting, and he was abusing the opposition corner in between rounds. And he kind of makes you think, and particularly on a night like that where women's boxing is on this pedestal and it's taking center stage, stay out of the limelight. It's not about you.
Yeah.
No, he was well behaved the other night, though, wasn't he? In fairness, on this occasion, but yeah, he has got a bit of form. He had a bit of form, and Cindy was fighting KT as well. So yeah, old Jordan, he's been in bother before. But anyway, nothing was going to steal the main event's limelight. It did live up to the billing. It was magnificent. But Liam Smith put on arguably a career best performance. You know him so well, Ant. You've trained with him for years and years. You were there, you were in the dressing room, you saw him before, you saw him after, you had a bevy with him, all the rest of it. I mean, you assess the whole weekend for him.
Do you know, when Liam looks back on his career, that's going to be, obviously won the world title, he boxed Canelo, but that's got to be right up there, because he got a great reception. He went out the ring to cheers. The crowd, you know, the song, it's called That Girl. It's a very easy sing-along song. And it was just a great night for him. But I think if there was a fight that was, and Liam said it for a long time, because it's been talked about him in Jesse Vargas for a while, it was perfect for him. And it was very odd that Jesse Vargas, how he behaved at the weigh-in. And it was at that point I thought, I fancied Liam, probably more lent towards points. But then when I seen the weigh-in, I was like, nah, there's no way. Liam's going to get him late. And listen, Jesse had his moments, but I just believed the writing was on the wall from early on. And that's a great win. Not just a great win, but against the first man to stop that opponent. It was it's a brilliant night for him, and now it puts him in the position for whether if it's a world title, it's another big fight for him. And when you look back at Liam's career, you know, he boxed at Dallas Cowboys Stadium, he's won world titles, he's had the local derby at the Echo, and he's boxed at Madison Square Garden. I'm a little bit jealous.
Top performance, and just a fight as well that was taking place in Vegas, Rob, that we spoke about before we started, which was Shakira Stevenson and Oscar Valdez. It was a stunning performance from Shakira, wasn't it?
It really was. We've kind of said this for his last couple of fights now. I know Jamel Herring was supposed to be quote unquote the breakout performance for Shakur Stevenson, but this was a different level, in my opinion. You know, unification. Oscar Valdez. You know, 12 months ago, we were all singing his praises for that brilliant performance that he put in against Miguel Burchelt. Less than convincing in his next fight. When he boxed Robson Conceição, I actually thought he was very fortunate to get the result in that fight. Again. But Shakur Stevenson was always going to present big problems, just the same as Robson Conceição did. His movement, his defense, that amateur, well-schooled style. And I'm a massive advocate, I'm a massive fan of Shakur Stevenson. I think he could be the best out of that crop of young Americans between sort of 130, 140, the 135 guys as well. But I was disappointed in Oscar Valdez. I feel like Oscar Valdez is somebody who's always given a lot of value in his career. He had that war with Scott Quigg that we all remember years ago. I mean, he's always been an all-action fighter, comes forward, throwing big shots, exchanging. Obviously, a part of it was Shakur Stevenson's brilliance and his control of distance that didn't allow him to do that. But I was disappointed that there wasn't seemingly a plan B or a plan C, particularly when you've got somebody like Eddie Reynoso in the corner, Canelo Alvarez's trainer. It didn't really seem like there was a plan B, and it almost felt like he was kind of happy to go the rounds towards the end. I didn't feel like he really threw caution to the wind, but take nothing away from Shakur Stevenson, a marvelous performance, 2-weight world champion, unified champion, and really the world is his oyster. I think 135 pounds is where we're going to probably see the biggest and best fights for him. But at the minute, he's the number one in the division at 130 for sure.
I'm with Dom. I'm with Rob. In that sense, I believe he's a special fighter. I really do. And I think you're looking at a pound for pound, you know, number one in the future. I think the big thing for me is, and I love his attitude, Rob, Dom. I just love the way he's like, no, all fights, I want all the smoke. And it's like, you look at that lightweight division, we know how good it is. It's just, I can't see them being in a queue to fight him. I think the big fight for me is, we'll see what happens with Lomachenko. But that's a possibility, you know, both top rank, and they might see it as a passing of the guard. I mean, you can never speak about me, certainly. You can never speak about Lomachenko like that, but that's how they might see it. You know, by the time it comes round. But I think there's a little bit of Mayweather about Stevenson, but I don't know, would you argue a little bit more pretty boy rather than money at the minute? He's ready to, to force opponents back, to unload the big shots. And a shot that I absolutely love the way he holds out the lead hand and he drives that backhand downstairs to the pit. It's a horrible shot, but so effective. Unbelievable performance for me.
Top Rank also promoting the Devin Haney, George Kambosos undisputed title
the
fight.
winners there.
Devin Haney versus Shakur Stevenson could be a massive fight down the line as well. So he really has an awful lot of options. And I think he'll end up eventually, kind of 6-7 years down the line, will probably ply his trade at 147 pounds. I think he's that good. He's got the frame, and I think he'll be able to go through the weights.
Yeah, it's fantastic. In and around those divisions in it at the moment is really, really, arguably the most exciting. But there is something that's fairly exciting coming up as well. It is Cinco de Mayo weekend. So we know what that means. That means Canelo Alvarez, the very active Saul Canelo Alvarez, is fighting again, and this time Dmitry Bivol. So another light heavyweight. He has been in with Kovalev, but this one is going in with a light heavyweight in his prime, a big unit of a man. Now, firstly, it's the Canelo show, isn't it? Is this going to be the toughest night? I forget the Mayweather fight all those years ago. Is this going to be the toughest night of Canelo's life?
I mean, you've touched on, you've teased it a little bit there, Dom. It is Cinco de Mayo weekend. It is Las Vegas. Canelo Alvarez is the biggest draw in the sport. Dmitry Bivol, while a light heavyweight, he's not the biggest light heavyweight. He's certainly not the biggest punching light heavyweight. Is he going to be able to get the decision? Let's not beat around the bush. If he is able to keep Canelo Alvarez at distance, look, you mentioned the Sergei Kovalev performance. Kovalev, I was actually there at the MGM Grand in Vegas. He boxed him in November of 2019, and he boxed him 8 weeks to the day after Anthony Yard almost got Sergei Kovalev out of there. Now, Anthony will be able to attest to this. When you hit those mid to late 30s, as Sergei Kovalev has, or was at that time, and he's not known for looking after himself outside the ring, you do those back-to-back camps and you go into a fight against a Canelo Alvarez, it's not the ideal preparation. Dmitry Bivol is much fresher, lives the life, has great feet. He's got a brilliant jab. He's unflustered. He's naturally bigger. In my opinion, this is going to be the hardest fight since the Gennady Golovkin rematch for Canelo Alvarez. I think this is a much harder fight than the Callum Smith, Billy Joe Saunders, Caleb Plants of the world. And if it wasn't Cinco de Mayo, if it wasn't Vegas, if it wasn't Canelo, I would be putting my money down on Dmitry Bivol. I think he is stylistically, we've always seen Canelo, struggle, even in the Plant fight, to pin guys down. If they're long, if they're big, they can control the distance. Eventually he gets to them. He did against Kovalev, he did against Plant. But what if he doesn't? And I think he was a round up against Sergei Kovalev and he stopped him in the 11th round. So that's a far, far from his best Sergei Kovalev. And I think Dmitry Bivol is in for a real shot this weekend at getting that upset.
Rob's also almost made me change my mind there. And I think, listen, a bit of it, I know what's wrong is, would he get the decision he deserves? He does deserve it. I think, you look at the fighters who struggled with movers. Bivol, technically, he's fantastic. He's brilliant. And I just think he's got to have success, or he will have success. I believe, again, it'll be a fight of two halves. I think it'll be really tight. And I want to say, again, I think late on the championship rounds, I think they could be the difference. But I see it being reasonably close and Canelo doing it on points. I think I've said it. I've been lucky enough to see him close up. Defensively, people go on about his speed, his power. His best asset for me by a long way is his defense, his ability to walk world-class fighters down. It's unbelievable. And he doesn't offer much target at all. And then when you do find that target, he half rides the shot to take the sting out of it. So whether that's why people going about his chin being so good as well, I think he takes the sting out of the shot if it does come through. But Bivol, like you say, he's not a huge light heavyweight. But I remember in Manchester when I think it was Chisora Parker 1, Katie Taylor fought Natasha. He was on the landing every night in sweat gear training. So he didn't make light heavyweight as easy as what they made out, unless he just left things late. I don't know. But I think, so you're thinking really, I think with, with Kovalev, it was an aging Kovalev. There's no denying it was an aging Kovalev, but Kovalev had great success. Canelo come from behind, whereas Bivol's a lot fresher. and I believe it will take Canelo to come from behind, but I think it'll be on points. It'll win the points. I reckon it'll be a close fight. Whether the scorecard takes close, I don't know, but I think Canelo points. But again, with Rob, it's one of the hardest fights you could possibly pick out there. Let's be honest.
Right. So Crolla says Canelo on points. Rob, what's your exact prediction, if you like?
Go on, I'll be your Huckleberry. I'll go for it. Dmitry Bivol, split decision.
Right, which would be some shock, obviously. But it's funny though, isn't it? Because you said, as you both said, he's not a big light heavyweight. He's 19-0. He doesn't have a big profile. He's not engaged with any banter with Canelo. He's not sold the fight. It's very, very high risk, low reward for Canelo in many, many ways, isn't it? And that's what makes it so interesting. Yeah,
it certainly is. I mean, the fact that he's, as Ant said there, I mean, this is one of the hardest fights. In my opinion, one of the two hardest fights he could have. The other one being Artur Beterbiev, unified light heavyweight champion, who is, of course, going to be boxing Joe Smith Jr. that we've just seen announced. But Bivol, for very different reasons to Beterbiev, will pose a lot of problems. That in and out style, that well-schooled amateur style. He's a very cool customer. We saw him hurt against Joe Smith in the late rounds of that fight, back end of the 10th round. Joe Smith, though, is a big light heavyweight. He's a big puncher for the division. Canelo, yeah, we've seen him stop guys at 168 pounds, stop Caleb Plant, stop Billy Joe Saunders with the injury. Can he stop Dmitry Bivol? I really do feel like this is... It's so indicative of the man that he wants to take the challenge on like this. I mean, we've heard him talk about Alexander Usyk recently as well. Him going in there with Dmitry Bivol, I mean, I know we keep seeing people talking about Jamal Charlo and we even saw Errol Spence's name bandied about and David Benavidez. But for me, this is kind of 1A and 1B. Beterbiev and Bivol is his hardest tests.
Well, just sticking with light heavyweights, because there is a big domestic clash coming up. A little bit earlier, I caught with Craig Richards.
Camp's gone tremendous. It's gone unbelievable. Working very, very hard, early mornings, late nights. So, yeah, we're on track.
This potentially takes you to the next level, doesn't it? I mean, it's a brilliant domestic fight. Two lads from a similar area of London. Again, both really well-respected fighters, very well-liked fighters, but it's all about that win, isn't it?
100%. It's like change everything you're in the game for. This will change your life. This is the moment you've been waiting for. So you want to seize the moment, grab it with two hands. You don't want this to slip through your fingers, this moment. So you want to do everything you possibly can do to get that win, to move on to the next stage.
Clearly, you're in there with Dmitry Bivol, but again, that's an opportunity that you cannot turn down anyway. And the thing is, your stock rose 1,000,000% anyway, didn't it, with that night in Manchester?
Yeah, 100%. You know, I know if one of the critics thought I was going to be getting banged out within 3-4 rounds. I heard the whispers around them. But really, it was all my own fault. You could see I had more gears to go for. I could have pressed it a little bit earlier to get the win. Saying that, no discredit to him, he's a sharp shooter. I had to be switched on in there all the time, and I couldn't just press him. He wasn't just there like a heavy bag in the ring ready for me to take him out. He was setting up traps as well. So it was a lot of thinking games in there. But I come around short on two of the judges' scorecards. If I just pressed one round earlier, now I'll be sitting there as the C4 world champion. But it woulda, coulda, shoulda. We just got to learn from it, move on. Get better in the gym and know when that opportunity comes around again that you grab it with two hands.
How do you see it panning out the weekend?
I feel like, because as I could get to Bivol later on in the rounds, I think maybe Canelo could get to him later on in the rounds. But the other thing is I've got quite good feet when I'm ready, and he's very hard to close the distance, Bivol. And I think where I was able to close the distance with him, people are now seeing the vulnerabilities from me going through could have gone through the third and fourth phases, but people are forgetting you got to go through 1, 2, and 3 phases to get to him to create the opportunities, because he moves very fast. He's got very fast hands. He lets his combination goes, and he likes to keep his distance as he's setting up traps. So it just depends on how Canelo, because Canelo obviously is good at cutting the ring down, but he's obviously not the fastest moving backwards and forward. He just knows how to navigate himself around the ring to create opportunities. So if Bivol can keep him long, keep boxing with him fast hands, he'll cause Canelo problems earlier. But just, you know, his timing, his counter punching is second to none, Canelo. So it's interesting. I'll be watching it in the morning for sure.
Right, I see. But you're not going to tell me which way exactly you think it's going to go. So you think there could be a shot with Bivol, or do you think Canelo ultimately... It's Vegas, it's Cinco de Mayo, it's all of that. It's just Canelo's night.
Cinco de Mayo, if they go to points, it's going to Canelo. I just think that it just depends on how he can handle the weight, because even I watched the Kovalev fight, I kind of felt like Kovalev was winning the fight until he got KO'd, but he was down on all the judges' scorecards anyway.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he had no choice but to knock him out. But you could see that he wasn't that comfortable with the weight. Bivol's quite big and strong at the weight. So it kind of depends on how Canelo takes the weight. That's why I'm like, it's interesting for me. Canelo on paper, the better boxer, but coming up in weight and Dimitri's assets, it makes it interesting.
Joshua Buatsi, Craig Richards, the winner of those two, I know Craig Richards has already been there. He's going to be looking for a world title shot. You've got Callum Smith, you've got me, my whole gym mate, with Callum Johnson, and it's sort of now or never for him. And you've got to look through. Lyndon Arthur's on the comeback trail. Dan Aziz, let's not forget about him. But there's a few there who I've not mentioned. It's a great division, both domestically and on the world scene. And there's a lot of them. They come through that domestic scene, they'll be right in line for a world title.
Before we wrap everything up, again, it is a massive week in Vegas, and I managed to catch up with the chairman of Matchroom Sport to go through everything, Mr. Eddie Hearn.
Just finished the press conference, and I'm buzzing more than ever for this fight because I see a challenger. Well, I say a challenger, just make one thing clear. Canelo Alvarez is the challenger this Saturday for Dmitry Bivol's World Light Heavyweight Championship. But I see a fighter in Dmitry Bivol that is extremely focused, ice cold, and ready for this opportunity. He was an outstanding amateur, two-time world amateur champion. He's been faultless as a pro, really, and just been looking for this opportunity to the strap line for this event, Dom, is legacy is earned. And that couldn't be more relevant for this fight, because if Dmitry Bivol wants to go down as a history maker in the sport, he has to beat a pound for pound great in Canelo Alvarez. And I really do expect a fantastic fight. Canelo Alvarez was behind in that fight against Kovalev. He had to come from behind to knock him out in the 11th round. And it was the size really that he had a problem with, I feel. That's still an issue in this fight. But against Dmitry Bivol, you're fighting a much fresher opponent. You're fighting a guy that is completely unscathed in his professional career. You're fighting a guy that has lived the life his entire career versus Sergey Kovalev, who really hasn't. And just a guy that's in his absolute prime. And I think, that's going to be really important in this fight, because Bivol is going to get hit very, very hard. And he's got tremendous feet. He's got good size. He's got great fundamentals. He can punch as well. And I think this is another fight where Canelo Alvarez might have to come from behind. I think he might have to come from behind in this fight and find a way to win. But he always takes his time, doesn't he? Even in the Saunders fight, the Plant fight, he was winning the rounds, but he was never panicking. It was nip and tuck at times. But he just believes that he'll get to his man. And that's going to be a similar issue for him against Dmitry Bivol. The heavyweight division is a step too far, but Alexander Usyk may not be, because don't forget, Alexander Usyk was a lifetime cruiserweight, really. And if he can get back there or within a pound of it, I think Sal would take the fight. Now, this is just something that I mentioned that has blown out of control in the last couple of days. But if you said to Sal, do you believe you can beat Alexander Usyk? The answer would be 100%. That just shows you the belief in the man. But, first things first, 175 pound, probably undisputed fight. And then, maybe cruiserweight, maybe Makabu or whoever's there. And then, we'll see what happens in the future. I believe AJ will beat Usyk, so it won't even be a conversation, but who knows what the future holds.
AJ and Usyk, anything on that in terms of venue and all the rest of it? I know
we're very close now. I hope that at the end of next week, we'll be able to make some kind of announcement or be very close to it. Obviously, last week the focus was Taylor Serrano. This week, Canelo Bivol, and then moving into the AJ Usyk fight, which is potentially the fight of the year, one of the biggest fights of the year, and we're closing in on securing that now. Look, we all know Tyson Fury's not retiring, and the proof will be when the WBC say to him, "Can you just confirm you're retiring?"
Yeah,
and he will say, "No, I'm not." So I think
you didn't take that seriously for 1 minute. Then you're not having that at all about the retirement.
No, I don't believe a lot of what he says, but he has continuously proved me wrong over the years. So maybe he will retire, but you'll find out when the WBC say, "Can you just confirm you're retiring?" And the answer will be, "No, I'm not."
So any other business for either of you?
Think of any, Rob?
Well, I mean, you just mentioned Tyson Fury there. I mean, is that the former WBC champion, the now retired?
Well, they've called his bluff. They've called his bluff, haven't they? You've got to have respect that from the WBC. So yeah, there's a talking point. But I think he's probably smart by the WBC, and I think a lot of boxing fans will be happy with that, because if he does give it up, then unless he has some kind of extension or something, we'll see.
Mauricio Sullivan's a friend of mine. I love Mauricio, but I don't think he's in the interest of costing himself any money. If Tyson Fury wants to carry on boxing, I'm pretty sure the WBC will accommodate him. If he tells them he needs a couple of weeks, I'm quite sure they'll give it to him. But look, we never know. Tyson Fury dances to the beat of his own drum, as we all know. I personally don't think that he retires when certainly when the Anthony Joshua fight is still out there for him. Maybe a Francis Ngannou fight and then coming back and what have you, who knows? But yeah, I mean, I can't see him retiring personally. I think Mr. Suleiman maybe just doing that for a little bit of PR. Who knows?
Dom, the one fight that I will say, what I am looking forward to, we've just seen announced, I don't know what you guys think, Agawa and Joe Cordina, I think has the potential to be a fantastic fight.
One final thing on Tyson Fury. Good to see he was in the Jimmy Egan's academy, actually, with his old trainer, Steve Egan, of course, who he had involved with the Dillian White fight as well. He had all the kids sparring him and everything. It was brilliant to see that, wasn't it?
It was great. And I think, obviously, I know Steve. Well, I actually said to him, I was sat near you, Dom. And I know I said, Steve, I'm glad you're in the car. And you could just see it. He says, Crolla says, I'm absolutely made up. It was that night, for somebody who's had since being a kid to be involved on a fight of that magnitude and, to be in the corner, you could see he was the proudest man in there, I think. But no, it was a really nice touch. And to see him back this week, I've had videos sent to me of like parents whose kids have been in doing a bit of body sparring with Tyson Fury. That's something they'll remember forever.
It is, and hopefully we get a classic this weekend then, because of course it is Canelo, it is Bivol, and we look forward to a fantastic day on the road next week. I think we've got a little surprise next week, Anthony, for the lightweight boxing show. So, we love life on the road, don't we? But listen, Rob, thanks very much indeed for your time and joining us on this bonus edition. Anthony, as ever, get in the gym now. You've got fighters to train. So busy as ever.
Take care, boys.